Welcome to Trey. I don't even know what we're going to call it. This is like a bonus episode. It's not your usual programming. This is a bonus episode. You know, Trey, we sat down, we spoke with Aatykon. He joined us for last episode to help us really break down the Inferno and whether we would smash or pass it. But we kind of got into some other things that I felt were interesting, that I wanted to keep them, like interesting topics, but I also I pulled it from the actual recording just because I wanted to have a separate discussion maybe about some of these things. How is it chatting with Aatykon? Any takeaways or
Well, we've both gotten our capes since then, right? No. Yeah, I was worried about him coming on. You know, he just seems like a very serious guy, and you had this like fun pitch, and he was immediately down for it. So I was very relieved and happy with how the episode turned out. And yeah, it's just cool to talk to him.
And what's funny, when we first spoke, we weren't sure how much time we were going to be able to sit down to chat, because he said he might only have time for like 20 minutes or something. So I was like, no problem. Let's come up with something a little bit more fun and silly instead of us just sitting down and chatting. Let's try to be a little, what can we do in 20 minutes? It was basically like what I was trying to think. Anyways, once he sat down, he had more time. So we were able to dive into these other subjects. You know, Aatykon's known for the Inferno, so of course we got some extra bits on the Inferno that we're definitely going to be talking about. We're going to talk about like OSRS guides a little bit and like content creators, because Trey, do you know this? How often are you looking up guides for content and you come across like 30 different options for something? And sometimes they're so niche. It's like one safe spot for like a specific Slayer task in one cave, like somewhere, and it's just like jellies or something. You'll find a guide on how to safe spot them.
Yeah, I think that's something that I bring up in this discussion is, I don't know if frustration is the right word, but the feeling of wanting to find a guide for a boss that's been out. Like I was recently on this big Araxor grind, and you know, I was trying to find a guide for Araxor, and everything said, you know, like 5 months ago was when it was uploaded, because they were all like day one guides. And it was like, okay, the meta has been found. Like, can I get an updated guide? But I think that, and kind of what I was trying to get from him is, the idea of like, well, it seems like most people kind of get in and get out with this new content of making a guide that's very quick and dirty on day one. Everybody's focused on that, you know, piece of content. Then they get the most views from the day one thing. And then nobody ever seems to go back and make like a really full fleshed out guide after that. And then kind of another part of that is how we are getting upgrades, updates so fast these days. And do you make a whole new guide when, for example, like the Surge Potion comes out from Yama, and it's like, okay, do I go remake all of my guides that will now add that into the inventory? So that's got to be kind of a hard space for people who make guides for people.
You almost have to like look for a guide that has like 2025 in the thumbnail or something that like points to a specific date, so you know like what's relevant. What I love about, so we have a ton of OSRS guides going out, but
we're spoiled.
We really are spoiled. Like anything you can think of, there's usually a guide on YouTube. And whether it's someone who's like a popular content creator has made a guide, but like, so I'm like, I look for videos sometimes for like, I mentioned, but like a specific safe spot for like a Slayer task. And there's always someone who has a guide, and sometimes like multiple versions. And yeah, this is the rough part about RuneScape being updated so often, is that sometimes like the guides don't even work anymore. Like you try to do an old wilderness boss guide, and you're like, wait a minute, I can safe spot these guys so they don't even attack me. And it's like, no, these are completely different bosses now. I'm trying to think, Trey, is there anything we want to talk about before we go into?
No, let's hear what Addy has to say.
Yeah, let's get into the first clip.
Like every week, do you feel like you need to bring back First Cape Friday just because it just seems like every week a new piece of content is coming out?
This is like a pressure on multiple angles, because in some sense, I feel it is a genuinely useful resource. I put in a lot of time to making sure it would actually perform well researching like different, like actual first capers methods of doing things and why it worked or didn't, and then broke that all down to something that would actually help anybody as long as they kind of followed what was going on, and then put that into a video. But that format works tremendously well in the context of a walkthrough where I'm actually doing it live. And as long as I can keep those concepts in mind and explain them on the fly and not just say they work, but prove they work, it's kind of irrefutable, especially if I'm dumbing down the gameplay and slowing it down to the point where people can follow it. So in that sense, it's just a recipe for success. And I know it will work for other bits of content, but here's the kicker. Other people make really good guides for other content, and I don't need to do it. So I think, like, for example, Colosseum came out and people were just like, dude, why don't you just make one for this? I need it. It's good. It works. I'm like, yes, it would, but Deer has a Colosseum guide. Video Game Bot has a Colosseum guide. Wizzy has a Colosseum guide, and they're all fantastic. So why make one for myself when I don't really need to? And that's one part of it.
Did you ever wish like you not wish, but there was like maybe less competition for those contents that you could like, I don't know, you're like, oh, maybe I want to make Colosseum content, but so many people are making it. Like, do you ever feel that way?
I think when I was starting out with content creation, I think for every content creator, there's a point where you go, I am actually in a competitive market here, and it would be nice if some people fucked off and I could just take the whole for myself. But on the other hand, like, as harsh as it is to say, these days, I think that watching other people's guides is like much more interesting, and other people's content is much better in both style, delivery, content itself. But this is partially because like I don't specialize in Colosseum. I've done speedruns. I've got like 100 KC or something. I did my time with it, but I'm no expert with it. So I don't know. I don't really think it's a big problem to not make content like that.
Do you prefer to
I think you need a specialty.
Do you prefer to
really
feel
cool.
like you've mastered a piece of content before you release your own content on it?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to guides, yes, absolutely. I think you can release like day one videos. I think everyone does that, and that's fine. But the second you sit down and like, this is how you do something, you have to know exactly what's going on. Or, like 99%.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just learning a rack store, and like, it came out, let's say, I can't remember exactly. Let's say it came out 6 months ago, and I look up guides for it, and every single guide is from 6 months ago, and you can tell they're all the day one guides. And I'm struggling to find one and then you can tell the information is like outdated because people just kind of got one out as soon as they could, and they don't seem to label it as, this was the day one thing. It's just like, this is the guide.
Right.
It feels rushed, and yeah, it's hard to find. Because people, just when that content is hot, people try to get out the guides for it, and then they just kind of abandon it for the next thing.
Yeah. And it's no real fault of their own either. I mean, you are going to produce content on day one. That's fine. The video is fine. But in some sense, not doing due diligence and putting that in a label on a tag on a video, or just the fact that like, if it hits the algorithm and it's like a 200K video, people will just click that over the new one that comes up. And it's almost a disservice, or sometimes it is just a genuine disservice if the guide is, well, rubbish.
Yeah, like what I do now, there's so many guides for things, especially when stuff has been out for so long. There's so many changes. I mean, the first thing I do is I go to the comments and I like see are people saying that this is the guide to use. The problem is every video has comments being like,
I mean, if it's content creators making it, you got fans of creators who will, no matter what they could put out, say this is the one, this is the guy, this is the video, and it doesn't matter if it's rubbish. But
and that's got to be hard, when you're talking about trying not to like overlap with other people's guides. It's got to be hard knowing that you could almost cash in on making that exact same word for word guide, and people would watch it just because they're a fan of you. And you could just kind of float by just on that.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite easy to as well. I don't think to be fair, I don't think there's many creators who actually do that in terms of tactic. It is their own flair generally, which is nice.
The landscape for content creation is insane in RuneScape. Other gamers, they're jealous of what we got because, oh my God, there's just so much. All right. Okay, we're back. Trey, I guess circling back to the topic of OSRS content creator, not content creators, not just content creators, but people who are making guides for stuff and like really teaching some of the hardest content is, I've been learning I've been doing Chambers with Eric for a really long time. but there's certain things that I haven't learned about it. And it's just, I found it like really frustrating to learn. And I would watch so many guides and it just never really clicked for me. I don't know. There's this thing called mage skipping with Chambers of Xeric. We probably touched on it on our Chambers episode, but something about it, I had the hardest time grasping exactly how it worked. And like now that I know how to do it, it's super easy, but it happened because I was like super focused on learning. I really wanted to really motivated to learn how to mage skip finally. And I came across this video that had like a low amount of views. It was just some dude, there wasn't much editing involved. And just the way he explained it just clicked and made sense. I can't even tell you why, but I'm just using it as an opportunity to brag that I know how to mage skip now.
No, I mean, sometimes you have to hear something 100 times and you don't get it. And then the 101st time somebody says it in a way that for whatever reason, your brain, it works for you and you're good to go.
Yeah. And I'm always so like grateful for like the RuneScape is such a weird game. And I love like telling friends about it who don't play old school RuneScape, but maybe they're like kind of interested on like the culture of things. But even like when it comes to content creation in general, like we're so lucky. We have tons of guides for stuff. And then we just have so much really awesome content creators in general, like making so like vastly different types of content. Trey, have you ever got into like the speed running side of things? Because that's really like Aatykon is like, really big into the Inferno speedrunning on top of like also kind of teaching how to get your first cape and how to get better at the Inferno.
Yeah, I mean, so I avoid anything related to speedrunning. That is probably one of the things that draws me to RuneScape the most, is that it's so like slow paced and chill a lot of the time, which leads me to never be MVP of raids and stuff like that. Generally not good at the game because of that. I'm very close to my elite CAs right now, and I just don't like. There's a lot of gear concerns, but I've barely gotten any of the speedrun times for any of the combat achievements, and that it's very frustrating. I know there's a lot of complaints about the speedrunning CAs because a lot of times it's just resetting, because there's this like understanding that you just start off pretty much any speedrun, you start off by sending two Xeric crossbow specs, and if they're not both proccing the ruby, hitting 100 from your ruby bolt, then you just teleport and reset. And that's like kind of like so ingrained into the calculation for what they even put as the speedrun CA time. And so that's frustrating, and it's even more frustrating because I don't even have that. So so speedrunning just for the combat achievements, I avoid like the plague. And the speedrunning in this game as a whole, it's just so different from how my personality, my play style. It's just something I try to avoid. But I love that other people are really into it, and their achievements blow my mind.
Because you don't like going fast. You like you're the turtle in the race, which that's I respect. Right. I get it. I'm there too. But what about like, do you ever watch speed running? Like, do you ever watch GDQ or do you also just like, you're not a fan of watching it either? You don't like to go fast. You don't like to watch things fast.
That gives me a headache. No, I mean, I've watched, I think Mulgoat Kirby is probably the one person I've watched his speed runs. Some really impressive ones. And, like something like the Duke fight, he did a world record speed run for Duke. And I actually picked up some tips that are like, okay, that's before they made the Duke changes, like getting the ingredients and just using them on Duke a bunch of times, as opposed to making the potions. Like that's a speed run tech that I found to actually just be more enjoyable than doing it normally. So yeah, I watch some stuff, mostly just like when there's a big world record set, it's like a 30-second clip or something. I'll watch that, but I'm not like in their stream like, oh, is he going to get it this time? Because yeah, like I was saying, the there's this preamble of in RuneScape of speedruns that you just have to keep resetting because it's just so RNG based, and most speedruns probably are very RNG based, because you need to be perfect, but you also need to hit big. So I don't know. It's not my world necessarily.
I get it. I like to go. I'm a bit of a speed demon. I like to go fast sometimes. I'll drive 70 in a school zone. I'm just joking. I never do that. Always under the speed limit. No, but I like the speed runs just because I don't know. I think so. Full disclosure, it's been a while. We're kind of like teleporting in the future. It's been a while since like recording. I'm back on my main right now. I'm taking a break from my iron and I'm playing my main, but I'm just putting the context there because I've been doing a lot of Duke and stuff, and I like having a bit of a time to race after. But I also, if I was playing my iron, I would hate it because you're dependent on all these, not just RNG, but RNG from other bosses because you need the gear. So that's annoying. But I do like having something that I can kind of watch. I just don't take it too seriously. I'm not resetting if I screw things up. I still want that KC. But I remember the first time I wanted to be a speedrunner when I was younger. Not really, but I was playing Duke Nukem 3D. It came out. They remastered it for the Xbox 360. And I love that game growing up. So I picked it up. And then I realized that there was like a high score for how fast you could beat levels. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to do this. And I tried speedrunning the first level of Duke Nukem. And I could not figure out how they were going so fast. Like it was just crazy. Like it was taking me like 4 minutes, my fastest. And like people were getting like 10 seconds. I was like, this makes no sense. And then I found out you could play back their runs. And then I learned in speedrunning, you're just glitching stuff. You're not going fast. You're just breaking the game and then taking a shortcut, basically. That's what they would do. They would skip the whole level and just finish it. And I was like, oh, I thought we were like trying to kill everything as fast as you could. No, they're not killing anything. They're just zooming. Anyway, so I gave that up. You
hung up the speed run cloak. It's just not going to be your career.
No, but I did. So I tried to do it again with the RuneScape twist. They have this, GDQ, this Games Done Quick is this like huge charity stream, but they have all these people who come on, they showcase how fast they can play video games. And it's kind of interesting. And it's always these like weird old niche games too. But I remember when old school RuneScape, they kind of had their own little speed running categories, and they were trying to get featured on GDQ. Let's see if I can pull these up here. I don't know if they still exist. Oh yeah, speedrun.com. That was like the ultimate speedrun website, I think. So I'm trying to see what types they have. Oh yeah, they have way too many now. But so back then though, they had like the quickest to like beat Dragon Slayer 1 from Tutorial Island. But the one that I always thought was really cool was like the speedruns for beating Tutorial Island. I always thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, eventually it eventually did come to GDQ, and it was I forget who it was. They were doing a raid speed run, like as fast as they can, and they were just kind of like narrating what they were doing. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah, I remember hearing that. I think I've seen that clip. I couldn't tell you who it was though, unfortunately.
Oh, a cold one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he was running a raid, Chambers of Zarek, and he was doing that for the GDQ event. But the reason I brought up they had the quickest to beat Tutorial Island. They had the quickest to obtain a camo, a camo piece. I don't know why that was a category, but
how that's completely random.
There was a way to like force a random event as soon as you got off Tutorial Island or something like that.
What? Wow, that one's wild. For all the different things you could do, of all things.
I guess the reason I brought them up, it never really caught on, obviously, but I guess Jagex did want to bring some speedrunning element to old school RuneScape. Like when I say speedrunning, not PVM speedrunning, but something more. So of course we have the Quest speedrunning. Trey, have you ever touched this?
very briefly, I think that the graceful like recolor that comes from it is the coolest of all of them. So I do want to do it someday. I have no interest in doing it. I am not excited at all to do it, but I do like the rewards from it, which I feel like is a very RuneScape attitude to have towards a lot of content. But
force yourself to do something that's absolutely sucks. That makes you miserable. But
yeah, it's cool. Weird because it's, you go into a different world and it's like a reset at like the account is completely different, kind of like the PvP arena. Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange format that I don't know. I mean, I could probably look. Oh, I haven't filtered out right now. But there's probably like 5 people online for those worlds.
Not even. I would be surprised if even that. It's always like 1 or 2 in a world, but if even that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they released the quest speed running, and yeah, they have the cool graceful. They have a giant clock that you can, like a stopwatch. That thing's pretty cool. It's a cosmetic. And so there's a limited number of quests you can do. There's only certain ones. You can't pick them all. And then when you choose it, it kind of sets you up at the beginning and it gets your account like quest ready, basically. So the reason I brought it up, I know we're going to be talking about like the Inferno speedrun, but we're talking about speedruns in general right now. And I was trying out the Cook's Assistant speedrunning. And there was like a couple evenings where a few of us in the Discord were just trying to like one up each other who can get the fastest. And it was actually a lot of fun. I had a really good time on like how fast, because you start trying to figure out different routes on like, how can I save? How can I like move 1 tile less to get the 3 items for Cook's Assistant? Such an easy quest. And the one thing I will say though, one thing I like, it's probably because I play old school RuneScape. I don't really like it as much for different games when they're like just doing these glitches and stuff. So the way you get a really fast, like the fastest Cook's Assistant speed time is you need to get flour, like a pot of flour, and you have to pick some wheat, mill it into a pot. That's how you're kind of supposed to do it. But there's an imp that is right by the general store. And if you kill it, it has a chance at dropping a pot of flour. So the best way to do it is you run up, not just try to kill, you're trying to one hit the imp and then trying to get the pot of flour to get the best time. I love that. I thought that was really cool. I'm not going to personally do it, but I'll watch a video breaking it down. I think it's neat. It can be really interesting. One thing that I do, I'm just monologuing. I'm trying to convince you to like the speedruns, Trey. One thing that's cool about GDQ is that I like how they narrate what they're doing. And that was what's cool about if you go back and watch a cold one doing his GDQ speedrun. He's kind of explaining things. Because a lot of people watching it aren't RuneScape players. So he's explaining it in a way that they can understand. It's fun.
There was this YouTube video that I feel like in hindsight feels like it was like 4 hours long. It was probably not, but I remember I watched this really long YouTube video that was like the history of speedrunning. And that I did find super interesting. Like, yeah, just like this person accomplished this, and it was kind of how speedrunning like has evolved throughout the years and the different ways that it's like categorized. And so, yeah, maybe like in hindsight, like the best of the best, and you're talking about them narrating it as they're doing it, which is cool. But I even more so like the way that like on a larger scale, like how speedrunning, those kind of concepts I find interesting.
Yeah, it's insane, especially when it's like Super Mario and they're like, if you play it on this really old TV, there's like less frames, so you can skip. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. That stuff's interesting.
Indeed it is.
You won me over. Okay, we can move on. No.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about speed running, but mostly about the Inferno. And then, okay, so I've already mentioned, I've already spoiled that we're a little bit in the future here. So we're going to be talking about when Yama was released, right? There's this, am I being dramatic if I say a problem with the difficulty of the not awakened version. Sorry, Addy calls it the awakened version. Or he references it that other people call it that. But the Yama contracts, and I know you've done way more Yama than I haven't done any Yama. So
I think we recorded this literally, it was either Saturday or Sunday in that was it Friday or something? I don't remember. I think Friday was when the contracts came out. And so, yeah, it was very fresh. It was right in that window where everybody was mad about it. And then by Wednesday, they had changed a lot of things. And I think everybody's good with it now. But yeah, this was right in the middle of the uproar.
Awesome. Okay, because I hear nothing about it. But one of the important things to mention is since Yama came out, we've got yet another extremely difficult boss, the Doom of Macchiato. What, Doom of Macchiato? Am I saying that right?
It's as close as I know. Yeah, I think that sounds right.
The Doom. So we got even another boss, and I was, deep into my iron when Yama came out, so I kind of wasn't really paying attention to the complaints of Yama. But I tried the Delve boss a little bit on my main, and it's something that I feel there was some people who were, there was some complaints about the level of difficulty. It might have evened out a little bit now, and they might be doing some patches, but one thing that Brick comes up in our next clip is Addy kind of talks about I'm going to say it because it sounds kind of cool, but the evolution of PVM difficulty, where when you look at the Inferno and then you compare it to maybe a high delve of the Doom of Macchiato, a high delve level. Delve, there's all these different levels, and the higher level it gets stronger. But the way they're difficult, is it fair to say they're extremely different? Or I don't know, Trey, correct me if I'm wrong, but how would you say it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that for every in-game PVM encounter, they kind of have a theme going in, mechanically speaking, to where they kind of focus on one kind of category of difficult, like Yama could be, you could say that it's focusing on coordination would be the overall thing. That's not super true because Yama doesn't super rely on your dual mechanics, but I think that was their intention. And Inferno would be endurance. And so I think that Yama has its own, category of difficulty with the way that a lot of small things are happening all at once that you have to manage.
What I've noticed is a lot of the newer difficult bosses I'm clenching my butt a lot more in situations versus, I don't know, when I was doing I never really made it far in the Inferno, but I've been doing Leviathan, and it's going to get brought up in this conversation, but Leviathan gets really fast at attacking at some points, and you're having to move, fight back, and switch your prayers. And I need to go for a walk afterwards because my butt, my anus muscles are sore. I don't know
we had Jad hands, now we have Jad ass.
Oh, brutal. Jad hands has a nicer ring to it.
Yeah.
Versus Doom, but no. Okay. Okay. And then last thing we'll mention before we play the clip is there's a clip I played in last episode, but if you forget or you didn't listen to last episode, it was from a podcast episode when the Inferno was first released. Keep in mind, it was level 90 at the time, but it was the first time we had really hard content, and it took 2 days for someone to complete it, 2 or 3 days. And to me, that was insane. And I thought, and I mentioned this on the podcast, that is that good or bad PVM boss design? Don't you want the bosses to be completable at a certain point? So it was, to me, it just felt crazy to have bosses that weren't beatable the same day. Now it's almost we have the opposite problem where they have a hard time creating bosses that aren't beat on the first day because people are so good at this game. So anyways, that's we mentioned the clip. That's what I say. So it's not fair for content to be this hard. If I can't do it, it needs to go. I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. Okay, let's roll it.
Yeah, this last thought was with Yama now, I don't know if it's the case that players are bad anymore, because so many people have gone through this phase of both speedrunning, sending tons of content, watching people who've been doing it to soak up how they do things. I'm not so sure that Yama, specifically the contracts, is actually a case of players being bad as much as maybe the contracts being tedious, which is sort of a way you can look at mechanics in content. And this is a bit like how TOA invocations, Colosseum, buffs and debuffs, and now contracts seem to have that same feel. Just how I see it. It's not quite a player problem. It may be a mechanical problem.
Yeah, we just our last episode was about Yama, and went on this whole digression about, we just had this whole conversation about, what is difficult, like how do you make things hard but not, tedious. And with Yama, Jagex had this. They said their design focus was to make it super difficult in the beginning, but not frustrating to do. Like by your 100th KC, it'd be like comfortable. And I'm curious because I know that, we recorded it right before, we recorded on Thursday. So right before the contracts came out, and we've seen kind of, I just finished the No Monkey video before we started recording this, where he calls it the worst update in RuneScape history. But I was asking before these contracts came out about if we can keep pushing the game to be more difficult. And so my question, would you consider RuneScape to be a game that is quote unquote solved?
Oh, yes. Yes, I think so. I don't see why it wouldn't be considered solved. On paper, the mechanics are simple. A lot of what you see these days that constitutes difficulty, as far as like public perception, tends to be things like port going into Inferno and flicking 2 million NPCs with one prayer point for half an hour. And I don't know if that can be considered truly difficult in the sense of like base content. It's more of like a unique challenge that's imposed, that, some arbitrary thing that is ultimately tedious to an extreme. And that feels more so what is how the game is going to be in the future as far as like this kind of content. And the reason for it is quite simple. The good example for it is Leviathan. So if we look at Awakened Leviathan, I don't know if Regular does this as well, but Awakened does it, where it goes to 0 tick. So different mechanics can be 4 tick, 3 tick, 2 tick, 1 tick. Most NPCs are 4 tick by nature when they attack you, right? And the difference is for Leviathan, when you're prayer flicking it, it goes from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 tick, and then it goes to 0 tick. And what 0 tick means is normally when an NPC is 1 tick, you have this window to pray, right? And with 0 tick, you have to pray within the tick window, which means 0 tick is fundamentally relying on player reaction. You're not thinking about it anymore. You have to just learn it and then react to it. That's why it took a while for people to get that kind of like locked down. And you're approaching this window very rapidly. And the difference from 1 tick, which is actually quite playable, to 0 tick is unfathomably hard. And because RuneScape's a tick-based game, you can't really go from 0 tick to -1 tick. That's it. That's the final barrier. So you can't introduce more difficulty than that, which means at 1 tick, where it's playable, no one has a problem at high level. You go to 0 tick, and suddenly you can't do anything else. You are purely focused on this singular action. So this is why it gets awkward with other mechanics now, because they have to stack things. They can't just take everything down to 1 tick. It would be instantly overwhelming, or 0 tick. They have to add things almost similar to Olm, where Olm comes out and it's like, hey, we've got flame walls, we've got lightning coming out, we've got special attacks, we've got regular attacks. And these things are not inherently complex on their own, but when they stack together, it becomes overwhelming. This is a good system. And this system has now been coupled in the likes of Yama to be almost a tedious system, where it feels like it's almost unkillable, like this awkward boss that's got crazy HP and you got to deal with all these little things. And yeah, I lost my train of thought. Where were we?
Talking about this being the game is, if it's solved or not.
Yeah, fundamentally it's solved, but the difficulty is going in a direction that becomes tedious. So I don't know if players, even if you could solve it, could deal with this tediousness of these mechanics.
Yeah, I think, and something that kind of brings it back to Inferno is like, I'm hearing about these people going for these Oathplate contracts, and a through line is that these fights are like 12 minutes long. And I understand that that's a part of difficulty to make something like an endurance challenge. And obviously Inferno is kind of the peak of that, but man, having something be super difficult and then just being like, okay, so it's going to be this difficult, and now you're going to have to be perfect for even longer. Is, in my opinion, the worst kind of, adding on to difficulty. And I know that's something people complain about all the time with like TOA and stuff, is just how like, yeah, you're going to have to do this difficult boss fight and you've turned the invocations. Now it's going to take 5 extra minutes. Which is, interesting because, go ahead.
From what I've seen, it's also this idea that like a lot of stuff in Yama will just one-shot you if you get it wrong. There's very little room for error, whereas a lot of other content that's endurance, you can make a lot of errors and get away with it.
Yeah, well, and I think it's, a lot of those ideas is what the kind of going back to that old clip Dills played is, I mean, that was how Inferno felt when it came out now. And then that's the perception that, people have of it. But as I, started learning it, I found out that's really not the case. I mean, you have a lot of downtime. You have a lot of, I mean, you can log out for one, but I mean, there is, once you have that really intense burst of the solving the wave at the beginning and doing what you need to do to get it solved. But then, you can kind of chill there. I mean, you can literally just, have them stacked up behind the pillar, take a breath, shake out your Jad hands. But even when you do go to solve it, you go in, knowing what your plan is after you've gotten past that initial spawn. And I don't know. So I think that's probably a reason why like the Inferno is seen as a better kind of type of difficulty than what people are saying about these, what are we even calling them? The contract bosses? So I think people are just calling them the Awakened Yama just for shorthand, but
yeah.
But yeah, so I guess bringing it back to the Inferno, I mean, do you think that those complaints about difficulty, like that we're saying about the Awakened Yama, do you think that applies to Inferno, or do you think that it's difficult in a better way?
It's an interesting one. I think that Inferno is not anywhere near as difficult as people think it is, and this is mostly because of a perception that's generated from basically players doing bad things and then relaying that experience to others. Because it is I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not an easy piece of content. So because there are many ways you can approach it. And I mean, for instance, like players running with Justicia run back and forth between pillars or Bulwark nowadays. People run in there trying different, almost janky methods to try and cheese it. So because there are so many different types of approaches for Inferno, a lot of these are not necessarily very conducive to actually getting the cape. And players using these methods sometimes get the cape. And what happens is they'll sit on 1 KC with a sample size of 1 and relay that information to the wider community. And when this happens, you get this general public perception that this thing is so difficult because this one person went through hell and back, self-imposed, to make this happen. And this has happened so many times now across, tens of thousands of people, that it's looked upon as like this crazy piece of content. But I don't think fundamentally that it is. Once you break it down in the same way FCF does, once you break it down and look at it in that sense, I don't think it's that difficult. So yeah, I don't know. Almost a community done it to themselves moment, really.
You can definitely feel that as being kind of your motivation on the first Cape Fridays is like so many times, like, the first blob spawn or whatever the later, like, wave 50 to 63 kind of spawns, you can hear it in the way you're talking. You're just like, okay, so this is where people would really panic, but it's not, just let the wave come to you. Just like stay calm. This isn't as hard as, it looks really scary, but just let it happen. Take your time with it, be patient, be calm. And I think that was probably the biggest like motto that I took away from that series is just like, let the wave solve itself.
Yeah, the other like big difficulty thing is definitely the endurance part of it, because it's a 2-hour ordeal for most first capers. That's a huge amount of time to commit to something only to get nothing in return. So ultimately, the pressure aspect of this goes a long way.
For sure.
I was gonna make it big as a streamer. Addy, you're gonna have competition in another universe when it comes to the Inferno. I bought all this like heart rate monitor stuff, and I was gonna stream my Inferno runs, and then I guess I didn't realize how long it was.
Yeah, it's rough. Like I think the fastest first capes I've ever seen have been around 70 to 80 minutes in max gear with a competent player.
Yeah.
And while I believe that people could get down to 60, I mean that's an hour piece of content. Nothing comes close to that in old school. Nothing. On the extreme end, it's like 3 hours.
Yeah, that's like you got a gear and everything. Oh gosh, yeah. Oh my.
You're in for a rough one.
Okay, we are back. Trey, I feel like this question, I feel like I've heard you say it multiple times. It's is OSRS solved? Is that something that like would worry you? Like, is it bad if it's solved, do you think? It probably is, isn't it?
I mean, it's like, you could say that, I know this is something you've been doing a lot recently. You could say that chess is a solved game because you know all of the different move sets and stuff, but because, there's different ways to frame it or to have it mechanically. And it's obviously chess. The big difference is you're going against another person, but it's the same with the PVM in this game, where even though the mechanics, we have them so down to where they're just like, second nature to us, they can still like organize those mechanics in a way that doesn't like is different and fresh and interesting to do. But it is hard because there is only so many mechanics, and you see a lot of patterns as these new content comes out. It's okay, here's a boss. Oh, he's shooting something green at me. Now he's going to shoot something blue at me. That kind of stuff, to where it's always going to have the same level of difficulty. You still have to, just because you know that it's solved and you know exactly what to do when you see it, doesn't mean that it's not the same amount of difficulty to, when other stuff is happening, of course, to go switch your prayers. And so there's going to be certain patterns that are always going to be there, I think, with the PVM. But yeah, I think as far as like on a fundamental level, this game is solved. I mean, I think from the day that people figured out the tick system, this game was solved in a sense, But I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, because they can keep switching it up. And the challenge has definitely been with their new content, kind of going into a little bit of the other part of what we were talking about, is making it difficult, even though it's been solved, and not doing that difficult in a way that's just miserable, because they can just make a boss with 100,000 hit points that you just stand there and hit. And, it will take a long time to kill, and they can make the drop rates for everything from at 1 in 100,000. So it would be very difficult to get a drop from there, but that's not very fun to do. So yeah, trying to manage that in a way that is still fun with the game being solved it's a battle they're going to keep fighting. It's going to keep getting harder because they're going to start running out of new ideas, and the game is going to be even more solved as time goes on.
I think that's a good point. I'm always thinking that there's all these ways you can innovate, but I guess like we're seeing. Well, so anyways, we mentioned that like the content they're coming out with now. It's funny. We went through this period where it seemed like Jagex wasn't sure how to really tune content that was hard enough, and it was like a big complaint. So we have like Toa, and a lot of people like weren't a huge fan of like the difficult level of it. And I love Toa, but like I guess I get it because I've been doing it on my iron, and it's like inconsistent, I guess, like because the fights are so long and they're so punishing if you make a mistake, and you just got to stay focused the whole time. Like I'll have a raid where I get through the entire thing and I'm full supplies, and I'm like, what's going on? Have I taken a sip of anything? Whereas other ones, I feel like I'm fighting for my life and I'm running out of supplies within seconds because maybe I screwed up and took some damage from one boss, took some damage from another boss, and next thing you know, it kind of all adds up. So we had this period where it feels like we weren't really getting hard bosses. I remember there was this like no monkey video. Do you remember this? I remember I almost feel like you and I first started recording together right when this was popping off, but
yeah, maybe the infamous HLC one. Yeah, that was, I first messaged you.
Okay, perfect. There we go. So like, and I can't exactly remember his complaints, but we talked about like doing an episode on it, and it was around like I don't know. Can you explain what to anyone who hadn't seen that video, like what it was kind of covering? Because this is around the time we had the Desert Treasure 2 bosses, we had Toa, we had no Yama, no Delve, no Colosseum.
It was when the Awakened bosses came out, and he basically was saying that they were too easy and that Jagex wasn't like feeding the high level community enough. And it kind of just turned into this whole thing of the community, I guess the low level community or the normal people community, whatever you want to call it. I think it turned into a big reality check for him of just like 99% of the community saying like, you have unrealistic expectations. And yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I mean, looking back, the majority of people have said that, the Awakened bosses are extremely difficult. And I think he was probably a little leaning into, a little bit of hyperbole to make his point, where saying that they were just like straight out like easy. And it turned into, this much larger conversation about like difficulty of content and whether or not it's good for the game for them to cater to them. And I mean, I having a couple years now to look back on all that, Jagex has done such a good job of catering to all the different communities. I mean, yeah, they've had Colosseum and the Delve boss. I wouldn't even really put Yama into the HLC, but I guess the contracts. So yeah, they've had some really big like releases for them. And if they can complete those day one, like No Monkey did with all of those, then I don't know what else they can ask for. I mean, it's like they can't have a new in-game boss every single day.
It does seem that there was some like answer to the, to those, we say HLC community, high level community. It just means the people who are like really good. Because this game is so funny. You have, you mentioned the Awakened bosses. We have these Desert Treasure bosses. You can make them super harder by feeding them in an Awakened orb. And they're really, a lot of people are like, they're really fucking hard. I've never even tried them, but I'll tell you right now, it's freaking insanely hard.
Yeah.
So you have people who are like struggling to complete it, and it's like taking forever. They got to learn and practice, and it's so tough. Then you have people on the HLC side who are like, I'll defeat this boss 20 times without banking, and I'm going to have like just like the worst weapons. And they have no problem doing that. And it's like, oh, that's damn.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's such a...
I think that's where like the conversation, when you start the conversation, is this game solved? The answer is yes. And the answer of like, is this game solved? The asterisk was that is, yes, it is if you're perfect. Like obviously if you, like you were saying with TOA, like if you're making mistakes, then you can have the game solved and still die at the boss. So then you have these, the true top of the top players who essentially never make mistakes. And that's where you get those, like the Port Khazard and stuff like that, to where they're taking these extremely difficult pieces of content and just, making them like laughably easy, like look that way. They're not, they're still very difficult, but, I mean, they're just, they got something in their brain that lets them do it perfect every single time. And it's incredible to see.
Yeah. And especially before, but we have with the Yama contracts that were, I know there was some frustrations there. And now, since then, we've had this Delve boss that the difficulty has like 8 different levels. And at level 8, it becomes the hardest. And a lot of similar things. Remember, people are saying like, this feels too hard, or there's something, the difficulty about this just don't feel right. Like there was some, I don't know if it was like frustration, but now we're seeing that, it's been a little bit, a week or so, or 2 weeks since then. And people are completing like level 36. The boss caps at level 8, but keep doing it and just stays at level 8. But yeah.
And that was a big part of the conversation from No Monkey. Is he specifically in that original video was saying he wanted that because that's an RS3 thing, like the Delve mechanic. And he wanted those bosses where, it's literally just, if you can be perfect for an extended period of time, you can just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And they got that. So hopefully, I hope the HLC is fed for a very long time from the Delve boss.
and it's something like the Delve boss where you can just keep doing it, and it keeps just getting hard, whatever. That kind of gives you something to compete against with others. In that space. Let's see what else. Okay. So that's basically it. But Trey, let's talk about the Inferno a little bit. Like at one point in time, I remember you were wanting to try the Inferno. Maybe it was on your main. It has to be your main, right?
Yeah, it was right after I maxed.
Yeah, right after you maxed. Where's your head at? Like, do you have PVM goals? Do you have a what's the word I'm looking for? Do you have a ambition to like be able to do the hardest content like, Awakened Bosses, Yama Contracts, Inferno, Coliseum, etc.?
Yeah, the very first All About episode we did was me and Dakota, and I think Aatykon actually in the original episode mentioned the same kind of concept of getting over that hurdle of something like the Inferno and just having this feeling of like this whole like headspace shift where you were so dreading it and you were so miserable, but now that you've accomplished it, you're kind of like hungry for more. Mm-hmm. And Dakota on that original All About said something very similar. And so I've never felt that, and I would love to get to that point where I feel that same way as they've described. But I want to push through and get to that. I want to do the Inferno, I guess is the answer to what you're asking. It's just an issue of like me making excuses, and legitimate excuses, as far as like, okay, maybe this isn't the right place and time for my account to do it yet. Especially since I restarted the Iron, it's like, okay, well, here's this checklist of gear, and that's very easy to make into a bunch of excuses. I mean, a lot of people, it's like, well, the Inferno should be done with the T-bow, so it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll wait until I get a T-bow to go for the Inferno, which is to a lot of people would be ridiculous. I don't know. I want to eventually. It's not on my goal list at all right now. It feels like very far off still. But I intend to be playing this game pretty much forever. So there will come a time when it just feels right to go there, I hope. I don't really intend to push myself there before it feels like I'm ready, or like, I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, it's just going to be a time when I get bullied by a bunch of people that I don't have. They're going to say like, you're this, it'll be me getting some other achievement that's probably harder. Like I'll get, like a hard mode TOB completion or something. And they'll be like, you're doing hard mode TOB and you're not doing Inferno.
Yeah.
And so it'll be like, all right, fine. It's time to lock in. And it's hard because it also, it just feels ingrained into the Inferno experience that you have to like go into the lab, lock yourself away for a couple weeks or a month or something, just disappear off the face of the earth, and not come back until you get that broadcast in the clan. And I don't really want to do that either. So I don't know. Yeah,
it's tough. It's daunting,
tough,
isn't it?
It's very daunting.
It's like the equivalent of like, I don't know, going off to like deciding to go to like university to pursue. There's a point in time where I was thinking about going to university and getting like a bachelor's in something, and then like the idea of like, oh my gosh, this would take. And I was putting like how long it would take. What if I fast track this and did it? Oh my gosh, thinking like seeing how long it would actually take. It's like, oh, that's kind of daunting. I'm gonna have to really lock myself in. Yeah, I got ADHD. I can hyper focus on things at times, but I don't know if I could. If it's multiple years, I gotta stay hyper focused on something that takes a little bit more. I don't know. So yeah, the Inferno almost like feels like that a bit, but I love that we have. So I mentioned earlier I'm playing my main more, and part of it was this desire to pursue like harder PVM content. I was playing my Iron, and I'm starting to do PVM stuff. I'm doing like, I can do 300s. It's kind of hard to solo them. I just don't have the DPS for it, seems. Obviously, skill issue, I can get better and figure it out, but whatever. And then I was doing some Fasanis on my iron, and I have like pretty budget gear, but I was actually able to get a kill. It just like took 15 minutes and would like go through all my supplies, and it just like, it was fun though. I was getting like this rush of like, some of this hard content is really cool. But I think I was like I wanted to do like really hard content, and I was doing a lot of TOAs. I really want that light bearer. I wasn't getting it, which is fine. But then I was like, I'm just going to pop on my main. And then I started killing some stuff. And then it was a lot of fun. And I was like, I'm going to play my main, but I want to pursue some of this harder level content. I want to try to learn chambers. How to mage skip better. Done. I want to learn CMs. I've talked about this on the podcast before too, but just like learning how to do the Inferno and all that sort of stuff. And the Inferno itself is daunting. I've got a kid since I last tried to do it, and finding 2 hours to do the Inferno is quite tough. But anyways, but now that we have the Coliseum and other, even just like combat achievements, I'm trying to learn it. I'm been doing a bunch of Duke lately. And trying to get all those combat achievements, not the speedrun ones, but there's other ones where like you can't run and stuff. It's like, it's a little difficult, but I like it. It's kind of, I'm pushing myself a little bit more. So I think I will go for the Inferno, but it's going to be like after the Coliseum, most likely, just because how much more accessible the Coliseum is. But I am kind of excited to,
I feel the same way on that specifically. I also kind of want to do Coliseum first, because it is, you do lose that, that mindset of like, this is going to take 4 hours. It is kind of get in, get out. Even though people have said that it's potentially more difficult or difficult in a different way, or just more, it's like, faster paced and stuff like that. Yeah. It's nice to know that like, if I came home from work and wanted to do a run, it's not going to be an hour and a half and then a death and then just like going and crying in the shower. Like it'll be, I'll be crying in the shower 15 minutes in, and it'll be a lot less of, a lot less heartbreak, I would think.
Totally. It's cool. I'm kind of excited to see, we're going to hear what Raids 4 is, in like the winter of 2025 or 2026. We'll see. But I'm interested to see like how they find a way to pump up the difficulty. I think it might be, I'm not sure. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Any closing thoughts? We don't do these bonus episodes too often. I don't know how to end these. What do we do?
Well, I guess you said Raids 4 and you said winter. So those are two key words for we have an all about coming soon about Raids 4 with winter split. So
oh my goodness.
Listen,
I heard this is a long one too.
Yeah. I don't know if it's good, but it's long. You can hear a little bit of two people sliding into delirium as the episode goes on longer and longer. No, it's a really fun one. I'm excited to hear it again because, we both brought our own pitches for what we would want, just a fun idea for a raid, and kind of put them up against each other. And yeah, I think it'll be a fun episode. And I hope that, I'm just so excited for whatever Raids 4 would be.
It's cool. And the best thing, so Trey, I got some hints of it before you guys recorded it, because you were asking in the Discord to send some ideas. And what I always think is cool is like, just people are sharing their ideas for Raids 4, and you're just like, I want that raid, and I want, these are all great ideas. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like the ideas are kind of endless, which is exciting.
Just the pitch of where it would take place, it has so much, effect on what the raid would look like and what it would be. They've, like the difference between TOB and TOA as far as the theme goes, just based on where they take place, is such a huge part of what makes those raids what they are.
Oh, yeah, totally. They're so like unique in their identity. That's quite fun. So yeah, guys, keep an eye out for that. That being said, next episode, we are diving in. We're continuing our PVM Smasher Pass. And we'll be talking about the good old Theater of Blood in a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're going to be rotating almost a little bit. PVM Smash or Pass. We got You're All About. I don't know where I'm going with this. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Woo.
Do we play music here? Let's just do the teleport down. Let's teleport out of here.
Okay.